I'd like to welcome everyone and call to order the City of Milton Common Council meeting on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015 at 7 p.m. At this time, I'll ask for confirmation of the appropriate meeting notice.
The meeting was noticed at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
Thank you very much. We're going to make a slight deviation from the agenda tonight and do the tenure awards first. We have a couple of people getting awards who are actually on shift right now. So I will turn it over to Administrator Hulick.
Sure, and the purpose of this is just to kind of recognize those folks who were at a tenure portion of their employment with the City of Milton in 2014. So we have a couple of those awards tonight. We have a couple of 5 years and a couple of 25 years. So those folks who are receiving 5-year awards are Kevin Arneson, Kyle Johnson, Lon Liefke, and Ryan Spangler. And those folks who are receiving 25-year awards are Howie Robinson and Ron Griffin. So if those folks want to meet me up front here real quick, we've got some certificates for you. What we have is just some certificates that prove the fact that you've been here this long, which is
Besides the gray hair.
And then we've also got gift certificates for those folks, thanking them for their service.
Is it interest? Is there a difference?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So we got Ron, Howie. Here's Lon. And then two other folks aren't able to be with us tonight, but we want to thank them.
The city wouldn't run without our employees, so thank you very much. Those who were recognized tonight and those who have been recognized in the past and who will be recognized in the future. Now we will go to agenda item 2, which is public comments regarding items which can be affected by council action. And we have some folks who have signed up for a number of topics. If you have signed up and you do not wish to speak, as we found out is sometimes the case last time, that's fine. But I'll read them just in the order that I was handed them. You'll have 3 minutes. Please be respectful of others who wish to speak. There's several people. There is not an opportunity at this time for a back and forth with the council, but instead an opportunity to make a statement. And then if there is further council investigation or reaction needed at some point, we can do that. Certainly the agenda items in every case here that are noted are being discussed tonight. So first up is Jeff Reynolds from 8559 North Kidder Road. Please come to the podium.
Well, being first has its prestige. Thank you. My concerns are of the interchange, of course. I was at a meeting, well, the last one, and I already asked you about running the traffic by the school, which I think is a terrible idea, which led me to believe, I kind of was wondering who is helming some of these ideas. If they were the same planning crew that let 26 cut us as Milton off from the rest of the world, I'm not so sure you should be helming this one. And with that being said, I guess I just want everybody to understand that I really feel that your troubles and your wanting this interchange out on M to fix that, what happened to when 26 came through. It won't. making an interchange and running that type of traffic through the backyard of a school. And I'd been told that the school board wants this also. And I wonder, and I just wonder what kind of school board would push something that would put those kids in safety, their safety in jeopardy, to run 20 pounds of road into 10 pounds of town. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Lucy Koala from 138 East Pineview Court in Edgerton.
I'm here to speak against the interchange and industrial park again. After not one but 2 listening sessions since 2013 when this round started, with overwhelming opposition to this at each, and all of this information that you guys have in your packet tonight, I hope you read it very carefully. How can anybody think this is still a good idea? It's time to put an end to this. So tonight, I'm really hoping that we get real answers, real opinions from the entire council, real dialogue between the audience and the council following whatever, quote, new information you guys have decided to present tonight, which, judging by your packet, it's exactly the same. So I highly suggest that tonight the city decides to kill the interchange, the industrial park, the annexation, and any developments on the west side, and instead commit yourself to redoing the library and Parkview Drive and embrace Milton's east side and downtowns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, also on agenda item 5A, is Nancy Lannert, 225 Forest Lake in Milton.
Good evening. I'm here to voice my opposition to the proposed Highway M interchange. I read Mr. Hulick's communications to the council members and to the mayor, and I think you did a great job. It was well written, and you had really good supporting documentation. Thank you. Based on the information contained in the communications, it seems that Mr. Watson, the developer, has evaded many important issues, such as lack of a funding agreement, lack of a development plan, and he sidestepped the issue of how he would cover the costs associated with the plan so that the city of Milton wouldn't have to bear these costs. I'm very concerned that our taxes are going to jump due to having to maintain more roads. We'll probably have to upgrade our sewage treatment plant in order to handle additional capacity from that as development goes in. We will probably have to hire on more public works staff to cover the maintenance of the additional roads and such. I'm concerned also about the increased traffic past Milton West Elementary, like the other gentleman was. That's not a good idea. I'm also, as I'm an agriculturalist person, I work in conservation, but I'm very concerned about losing 500 to 2,000 acres of cropland, not making any more of that. So I think you should consider the information that was passed out in your packets very carefully, and I would be very, very pleased tonight if you would select option 4 of Mr. Hulick's suggestions or comments in there. That was to discontinue all discussions related to the Highway M interchange. So that's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on agenda item 5J is Lynn Retzloff from 3535 East Rodimer Road in Janesville.
I'm speaking to support the library. My name is Lynn Retzloff. I live in Janesville, Wisconsin. I'm here in support of the Milton Public Library. I hope the city of Milton will stand with me and help the library grow. What the Milton Library means to me. The library has been extremely important to my family since moving to the area around 12 years ago. We moved to Janesville and used the library as one of the first resources to learn more about the community and the school district my children would be attending. We passed what we learned on, and when my parents decided to move from Adams to be closer to their grandchildren, they chose Milton as the place to live. My children have attended numerous story hours. They have attended guest presentations and learned firsthand about subjects from the importance of bats to bird rescue to musical instruments. Now that they're older, they can use it for books, for school papers, video rentals, teen programs, etc. I have reserved space to use for group meetings and attended meetings others have put on, from environmental topics to knitting circles. A step-nephew moved in with my parents from another state and was years behind in school. With the help of the library resources and information and suggestions from the librarians, he was able to catch up on his reading and schooling. The library provided home help to complement the help he was getting at school. My mother has taken classes to learn her computer and constantly takes out books on sewing and other hobbies and crafts that help her feel productive as she is unable to work. My stepfather, a highly decorated Vietnam vet, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer 6 years ago. The library offers resources to learn of treatments, diet, how to fight, and how to live with cancer. It gave him hope and helped him fight a good fight and live a good life. When his health rapidly deteriorated this past summer, he was unable to ride his horse, fish, play tennis, even eat. The library was the place I turned to for movies, comedies, musical, old films he would reminisce to and get lost in, anything to help with the pain his body and mind were dealt. He binged on movies and was able to laugh with them and talk about them until he was no longer able to do that either. He passed this past September. The library has grief books, thank God. Now my mom is alone for the first time in her life. She is left with not much of an income to survive on. The library will still be there for her. Books and movies for entertainment and as resources. Classes to learn from and a sense of community. A place to be around other people. I know I'm not covering everything this library means to me, but I hope I have said enough. Generations of users in one small family highly benefiting from the library. This is only one small snapshot of the impact the Milton Library has had on one small family. If you can imagine every family's snapshot placed into an album, let's just say you definitely need a bigger library to house all the volumes.
Thank you very much. Tom Chesmore, 345 Elm Street, on both agenda items 5A and 5J.
Does that mean I get 6 minutes?
Technically, it does.
First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for taking the step on Parkview Drive. I'm glad I gave it to you. I hope you enjoy it. I'm here to speak on a couple issues. First is the County M interchange. Now, I had to do a lot of digging when people were calling me and asked me to run for mayor. But I have managed through several information requests to come up with a lot of things that I didn't know. The downsizing, the different things that were offered. I heard somebody stand up here and say the things that Mr. Watson has evaded. If you want to see evasion, I got plenty of paperwork with me and at home about some of the evasive tactics that were done by this mayor and this council. The people were not told the truth. There was a lot of misdirection, a lot of backdoor things, a lot of backroom deals, and a lot of phone calls that were made on behalf of the city by people who never disclosed it to anyone and never made an attempt to even bring it forth to the public. There's been a lot of misdirection on this thing, and for those, I know there's those of you that know me, and when this was first brought to me as mayor, I declined to even look at it. It was too big. Now, probably most of you know by now, I want this to happen. I think it's a good thing. It's down to at least 500 acres. This idea of running the traffic past the schools, that can be taken care of. All you have to do is work with the developer, which is something that nobody seems to have a handle on, because personally, I think it's just a lack of leadership. The other thing is, there's still people out there thinking that there's going to be a gravel pit. Now, if you turn around and you annex that land into the city already has zoning ordinances in place to prevent a gravel pit from going in there. You might have not known that, or you did, and you just wanted to keep harping on the same thing. Now, there's been a lot of misdirection and a lot of things that were done wrong here for the last 2 years. And it's ironic, when I talked to Brett, I said, isn't it ironic, the same thing that I would never let get put on an agenda when I was mayor, all of a sudden, you don't want it on an agenda neither. There's been a lot of things done here that are wrong the last 2 years on the city's behalf and on the developer's behalf. But it's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think this is a good thing. You want library improvements? We want to build a new fire station. And we want to redo Parkview Drive. Does anyone realize, has anybody researched the amount of tax revenue that is generated by land like that, if it's brought into the city? It's huge. Take a look at it, folks. Look it up, Google it, do whatever you gotta do. But it's huge. You can do a lot of good things with just the tax increments coming off of that property. Now, people may not like my stand, and I know there was the lady that was up here before, she signed my papers for mayor, and I apologize for my stance changing. But I didn't have all of the information when I talked to you. I did not have the information that I have now. And I can tell you one thing, it hasn't all come out, and it needs to be said. This stuff needs to come out so that people can hear it. Because it's going to affect everybody in this room. From the firemen all the way down to the business owners, all the way down to everyone else. The truth has not been told here. There's misdirection all over the place, and it stinks. I don't like it one bit, and that's one of the reasons I decided to run for mayor. Now, on your Parkview Drive funding and your library, you do realize that for those of you who are for this and are going to vote for this tonight, that you are now cutting your fire department off at the knees again. These guys have been promised for the last 10 years a new building. Although I know what the finances are from the city standpoint, I've seen them all. I've been down here to City Hall. I've been talking to people. I realize we can't afford it. Not right now, but to put it off until 2020 or beyond that, you've got to be kidding. You got a building that's falling down in the corners. It's sinking 6 inches a year probably. I can remember pumping 20 pounds of caulk into between the roof and the walls. Let's take care of our priorities here, people. There's priorities in this city. Now, everybody's got their own priorities. Some people think it's a library. Some people think it's that street. That street is a $4 million project for those of you that don't know. You can recover it and resurface it for about, what is it, 750,000? 650,000? 600? That'll get you 5 years. You're also going to see 2 water rate increases in that time. Prepare yourselves now because they have to come. You can do your research on that too. Anytime you dig down and you have to dig up the pipes, you're going to see water rate increases because it affects how that comes out of a whole separate fund. A lot of people don't know there's a lot of funds in this city. That comes out of it. So you're going to see 2 water rate increases. Nobody's going to tell you that, but that's what you're going to see. It has to happen. I hate to pop everybody's bubble, but that's reality. So here we go. You can make your decision tonight to either do Parkview Drive and do the library, or you can figure out some other fancy way of doing your financing. But I think that screw the hell out of this fire department again is just outrageous. And I hopefully I'm sitting in that chair and we can fix some of this.
Thank you very much. Next up is Rob Doxey, 26 East St. Mary Street, on item 5J.
Evening. I'm here to be the voice of the Milton Fire Department and speak to City Council about their agenda item to fund the library and the Parkview Drive project. If the city goes ahead and funds these projects, they won't be able to take any more debt until the year 2020, which means they won't be able to fund our fire department. That was told us it would be available to us around 2016. We pushed that back till at least 2020. I'm not here to tell the council that the library project and the Parkview Drive projects are not needed. They're both very worthwhile projects, but I believe that addressing the needs of the people that protect this community and giving them the facilities that they need is a far greater need. The current fire station has a lot of flaws. The corner, as Tom said, the corner of the one side of the building is starting to fall in and could eventually collapse because of the way it's sinking. There's also deficiencies in our sleeping quarters. The bunk room that we have was never actually meant to be a bunk room. It was actually just a closet, more or less, that we converted into a bunk room when it was needed to have people stay at the fire station. The station was never meant to actually house those kind of people. Years ago, it was just meant to house the fire trucks. Now we have an increased number in people that are staying at the station because they live outside of town, and also because as of February 1st of this year, we've increased our staffing level to staff the station 24 hours a day, which puts an increased load on the station itself. In the near future, the increased use of our facilities by the current membership and to attract new people to the department, the deterioration of the current fire station will have a dramatic and negative impact on the recruitment or retention of the membership. People don't want to stay in a bunk room that's not safe. People don't want to stay at a fire station and be a part of a fire station that's falling down around them. The department membership is beginning to feel that the mayor, the city administrator, the city council has either forgotten about them or just doesn't care about them. A few years ago, the planning began for a new fire station. The building plans were drafted, the site's been approved. Over that stretch of time, we've seen a new DPW building, a new police and city building being constructed. Now when it's time to come and help fund the new fire station, the city council says that they think that the funds that they have should be given to other projects, and the money for the new fire station just isn't there. Speaking for the fire department membership, I can say that most of us take that decision personally. All the department members have a family, have jobs, have some other things outside the department that they have to take their time away in order to serve their community. We get up in the middle of the night, we run calls, we don't always get back to sleep before we have to go to work the next day. We spend a lot of our own time and unpaid hours maintaining a deteriorating building. Every person in this department has a passion for this job. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. I ask myself every day, what can I do better what can I do more to make myself a better firefighter and EMT? I'd ask the city council to do the same. We're asking you to find a way to fund this new station before 2020. 2016 was the date that we were told that we should break ground for the new station. 2020 is not soon enough. We need it sooner than later. So I would ask you to please take that into account in your decision making. But we need this new fire station now. It is completely inadequate for the uses. It was never built for what we're using it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Bill Wilson, 417 East High, on agenda item 4C1.
As most of you know, I'm the president of the library board. I apologize for my voice. I've got a pretty bad cold here. Our message is a message that says we've been trying to do everything right. The library board was very, very pleased, obviously, that the entire Shaw building was provided for library purposes. I think council's also aware of some of the numbers. There are almost 8,000 registered borrowers, 4,874 from the city, 3,007 from outside the city. That's about 88% of city residents that hold a valid library card. We took over the opportunity for the building. We met with the state building inspector. What we discovered is that the library cannot occupy the second floor of the Shaw space until major health and safety concerns are addressed. We also need to address infrastructure needs such as either electrical, data, ventilation, distribution, and so on to make a build-out possible. The library, with a lot of encouragement, has gone out and attempted to raise funds. We think we've been incredibly successful so far. We've raised almost $500,000 at this point. The 100 Women campaign that turned into 155 women raised a wonderful amount and really gave us testimony to the fact of how deeply people feel about the library. Others have stepped forward. Library board itself, 7 members of the library board have either given or pledged over $10,000 to the campaign at this point. We've received a $50,000 grant from a regional foundation. There have been 5 additional 5-figure gifts that have come from both individuals and from other sources. Where we find ourselves now is in a situation where we're trying to fight with one arm tied behind our back. We're trying to raise funds, but without the assurance that those health and safety concerns will be addressed. We really don't think we have a project. We're at a point where we think we could occupy the building for approximately $1.8 million. That isn't the complete picture, the $2.8 million project that we wanted. But it would allow us to occupy and use that space while we continue to raise funds for something additional. What we're asking for essentially is we're saying we're going to put together $2 million. We're asking the city for a consideration of $750,000 to address those health, safety, ADA concerns, and so on, to bring the building up to current codes. We really believe that addressing those needs will be necessary for the project to take place. I don't know where we are without the $750,000. Without those dollars, our fundraising advisor suggested that we could raise $1 million from the community. We're over halfway to that goal, or almost halfway to that goal. We do believe by the end of 2015 we might reach that $1 million. However, we don't think that without the $750,000 that's being considered to address the health and safety needs, we will be able to raise the rest. We have had donors or potential donors who have directly asked us, when will the project take place? Our hopes would be that if these dollars are allocated for library purposes, that we would be able to start work. It's interior work, good winter work. We'd be able to start work either late in 2015 or the very beginning of 2016 and actually occupy that second floor space with a phase 1 completion by the end of 2016. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Jody Trapasso, 8341 North Kidder, Edgerton, on agenda item 5A.
Good evening. As you mentioned, my name is Jody Trapasso. I live at 8341 North Kidder Road, Township of Fulton. I would like to express a few concerns regarding agenda item 5A, the possible county interchange and development. Please consider these comments, concerns during your discussion when you get to this agenda item. First, I would like the board, mayor, city administrator, or Attorney Thorpe to explicitly outline the difference between the vague plan from a year ago to the vague plan now, besides crossing out the 2,000 and writing in 500 acres. From the latest information that I have seen, there still is no more detail, no petition for annexation, no promise of any specific businesses coming. I know that the city administration still remains very concerned about the lack of details. So again, I just ask that you could please provide an explanation as to what's so different this time around that warrants your time on this matter. I'm curious if another developer with such vague details as Mr. Watson has contributed to you so far, would they receive the same amount of attention? Second of all, given Bill Watson's well-documented and unusual business history and his insufficiency in providing any detailed plans despite numerous requests, doesn't that give any, if not all of you, great pause? This is supposed to be the honeymoon phase for his proposal. If he's this evasive now, when he should be preoccupied with wooing you, aren't you concerned what he would be like if you actually tried to conduct business with him? I understand you have an obligation to listen and try to work with developers who want to bring business to Milton. I get that. However, you need to have a set of ethics and standards when deciding who you want to work with. For example, I'm sure the city of Milton would not want to do business with a developer or consultant who would suggest or to entice or bribe an elected official. I would like to believe that Milton is not that desperate. And third, in Mr. Hulick's March 3rd memo, there is an abridged overview, and there are 4 options provided for the council to possibly consider. I would like to suggest a 5th option. The city of Milton take a step back from the entire proposal, conduct your own independent research, including an economic and financial impact study, analyze this data, then evaluate and form a conclusion on whether an interchange, with or without any development, is even in the best interest of Milton at this time. I would greatly appreciate it if you would take into consideration all of these concerns and comments as you discuss this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Lance Fenna, 2022 East Minogue Road in the town of Milton, on agenda item 5A.
Good evening. In your packet, there was Exhibit C, which included a review from Dale Thorpe over there, the city's attorney. I did not know him, so I thought, well, I'll look on the website and see, who he is. He's got 23 years concentrating in business issues, real estate, land use, and zoning law. So, he gets my respect with that, with this subject. And the subject is interchange and the development out there. After reading this report, there were a lot of comments by Mr. Thorpe. Some of them are received no response, rejected the request, no such plan exists, would not take mining off the table. I have serious doubts. I received a carefully worded answer. I did not receive a definitive commitment. I did not receive a definitive yes or no. I did not receive a specific answer on that subject. In his summary, annexation without any proposal in hand, this is very unusual in his experience. The idea of annexation first, then we'll worry about soliciting businesses down the road. That's very unusual. And at the end he says annexation in this manner, the city is putting itself in a riskier position than actually not doing it. Why is the city not getting real business plans, solicited businesses signed on, plans of payment, guarantees, plans for water and sewer? Because those items are not needed for a gravel mine. Who's being played here? Who's pushing for speed and everything? That's a big question. Who's going to benefit from it? How many red flags does the city have to see? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barb Bendlin on agenda item 4C1.
Good evening. I am here to support our library renovation, and I want to say a few words about that. I am president of the Milton Public Library Foundation. The foundation provided some of the loan money to get the fund established for looking at the feasibility of renovating the library. And so we were very active in getting the ball rolling. We're very excited to know that we've got about $500,000 committed to our renovation, so it's very exciting. I have two reasons why I think the library renovation is so important. One is that about 6 years ago, I worked at the library for a year while I was on leave from my job. And I worked at the library and I saw who came to use the library. It was just about everyone in Milton came to the library. It was a way for me to kind of get to know people because so many people I'd never seen before came to the library. There were older people who were using the computer. There were handicapped people. There were people that didn't have a lot of money to use a computer. There were children's programs. There was just people coming in and out. And as you've heard from Lisa before, Lisa Brooks, the director, all of our programs have increased, our usage has increased, and so the library is just a growing place. Occasionally, when I get really sick of winter, I start looking at relocating. And you know what the first thing is that I look for two things in relocation. I look to see what the schools are like in that place, because I want to know that I've got educated students in that area. And I look at the library to see if it's a good, thriving, big library. So I think when we talk about the library as a destination, it's not a destination just for local people, but it's going to be a destination for people who choose to live and make Milton their home. If we have an outstanding library, and we already have outstanding schools, it means that this is an educated place, a place that really believes in learning. So that's my plug for going ahead and getting the funding for renovating the second floor of the library so we can move ahead with all those exciting plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up on agenda item 4C1 is Chris Watson, 527 Lombard Drive in Milton.
As many of you know, I do work part-time at the library, but I want to talk mostly about the library from a community standpoint, because I am a community member here in Milton, and the library is very important to me. But I also want to give you a backspin on what it's like on the backside, being an employee and seeing the sacrifices we kind of make to be fiscally responsible. We've been financially responsible. The library, you know, we're operating within our budget. We make wise choices. We make necessary sacrifices. We make do with what we have, and we have worked very hard to have money in order to have programs for children, programs for different community members. And part of that is by sacrificing other things as far as being able to reuse materials when we can and recycle items. So we've been a very fiscally responsible library, and I'm very proud of that, to be a part of that. But we've put a lot of planning into, and not only the library itself, but the board and the community members have put a lot of planning into what we want our library to look like and what we need in this community. And all of that planning is done. We're ready to hit the ground running. And what we need is that kickstart to get us going so we can get that upstairs safe for our community, safe for our citizens, and safe for our staff, and be able to open that up and have more programming. We also open up our building so that community members, groups, and clubs can meet there. And it's just something that Milton really needs, and I hope that you would be able to give us that kickstart that we need and support us. So please help the Milton community by backing this beneficial project.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, on agenda item 5J is Linda Line. Linda Lake? Yeah, all right. I realized it as soon as I said it. 414 Columbus Street.
Right. Good evening, Common Council and Mayor Frazier. I am also here to speak in favor of the library. I am one of the 100 Women Campaign for the Library, or as Bill Willison said, 155. And I'm also on the Library Foundation Board. But I want to speak about when my children were young, and we live around the corner from the library, so I considered the library as part of their educational process. We spent a lot of time at the library. We went to library programs, and they always came home with a huge stack of books. It was very impactful for my children growing up. I also wanted to speak about Barbara Benlin mentioned that the library is a destination, and I agree with that. I think about businesses who are looking to locate in town. They look at what Milton has to offer. They look at the school district. They look at the library. They look at our splash park. They look at other places in town that they want for their family. And I think a continued strong library and the development of this library is very important. And I think that now is the time to do this. We have the momentum going with the fundraiser, and I would ask that you vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time I'm going to deviate just a tiny bit from the agenda since there's a great big audience here. And I was going to do this in my mayor's report, but you're all going to be gone by then, and I want you to hear it. It's a proclamation calling attention to Youth Art Days in the city of Milton. We're talking so much about community, so I'm going to read this now as opposed to when you all leave here after our closed session. Office of the Mayor, a proclamation, Youth Art Days in the city of Milton. Whereas the city of Milton recognizes the value of children in our great city, and the colorful artwork they do entertains and beautifies everything from our school hallways to family homes, and whereas the youth of our community and their development of art skills are of critical importance to the future of our city, and whereas the ability to inspire the youth of Milton through creativity and artistic experiences adds value to their education, the development of their skill sets, and as important, helps add value to our city with the artwork they create. And whereas artwork provides an opportunity for youth and people of all ages to express themselves, and whereas youth artwork adds both a great sense of community value and pride taken in both the creativity and work completed and on display by our city's youth. Youth artwork on display throughout the city of Milton adds to our community's sense of character and proud history, and the creativity and beauty created by youth artwork adds to the value of living, working, and visiting our city. And whereas youth artwork is something for which all parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends and family, and all City of Milton residents and business owners can be proud of. Whereas artwork created by our youth will be on display at the Milton House from Tuesday, March 10th through Sunday, April 11th, 2015, with a closing reception from 1 to 3 on Sunday, April 12th, 2015. Now therefore let it be known that I, Brett Frazier, Mayor of the City of Milton, in celebration of these young artists of our community, hereby proclaim Tuesday, March 10th through Sunday, April 12th as Youth Art Days in the City of Milton. I issued that yesterday, so please, if you have an opportunity, stop by between March 10th and April 12th at the Milton House and see some of our young artists. At this time, we will move on to agenda item 4, which is the approval of the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
That's a motion by Clark, second by Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 5, new business. 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a possible County M interchange and development. I am going to give it over to our Administrator Al Hulick for a brief introduction, and then to our Special Counsel Dale Thorpe for some additional information.
Thank you. As most of the council has seen, and it sounds like a lot of folks in the audience have seen, I prepared a memo that corresponds with this item. The purpose of that memo was to kind of bring us up to speed, hopefully, as to how we got here, and to kind of set the record straight of what we know and what we don't know yet. As many folks know, there was a lot of discussion about what information was out there and what wasn't, so we tried to put that all together in a concise fashion to help people kind of understand where we've been and what we're trying to achieve with that. I think there's a lot of questions still yet to be answered, but it was the council's intent to have this on an open session discussion this evening, so the public can be a part of that conversation, and that's the only information that I have at this point. Certainly available for questions, but I think Attorney Thorpe can certainly start to provide any other information that you have.
I've been in contact with the mayor and the city administrator over the past week and had several conversations with the attorney for the developer. I can report on that if the council would like. The conversations have focused on what the developer's attorney described to me as their priorities at this point as to what they would like to have done. I was told that they were going to communicate with a memo to the council. I don't know if that took place or not. I saw a last draft this morning, perhaps that was circulated among the council members. Their memo certainly speaks for itself. My understanding from what was described to me is that the developer and the developer's attorney would like the council to consider as a matter of policy and as a threshold question whether or not the council wishes to seek a path toward approving an interchange at County Highway M. If the answer to that question is yes, then we would have to consider the issues to be addressed in implementing such a decision. In my opinion, that would take the form of the city negotiating a state agreement so as to state that support. Secondly, give substance to the promises that I've heard expressed to me from the developer's attorney that the developer would be responsible for those initial review costs, which have been estimated to be $50,000. Along those lines, I received the form of an agreement that I think has been floating around since last summer. It's the state sponsorship agreement. It would be a state municipal agreement. I reviewed it. I've also received a draft that was subsequently withdrawn of a funding agreement from the developer. We had started reviewing it, and then it was withdrawn in writing. I think you have that email in the packet as well. Earlier today, I received some language as to another approach toward guaranteeing city costs, which is a guarantee of those costs. I have not evaluated it. It looks like it probably needs work, but I think it's another version of the same assurance received previously, and that is that the developer would pay what they're estimating to be $50,000 in review costs. So, and again, as expressed to me, and I'm communicating to you, these are not my positions, these are theirs, that they would like a decision made at a policy level as to whether the city wishes to seek annexation, not annexation, but the improvement of a highway interchange. The subject of annexation is coming up less and less. I would say to the point where I'm not hearing it at all anymore. But I consider it a subject that still needs to be addressed and be considered as part of anything that you do at this point. That's my understanding of where things stand. I am not engaged in any negotiations with the developer's attorney right now. I have not been so directed, and I have not done so. I commented on the memo that was going to get sent to the council to clarify what I thought to be a factual inaccuracy, and I think that was corrected. And that's where things stand right now.
Thanks. One of the things that that we want to make sure that we get out there is it's important for me as the administrator position to present the facts of the information that are available at the time that that conversation happens. And again, that was the purpose of my memo, was to get that information out there and to present those facts. I'm in a unique position in which I get to work in the field of facts, and that's where it begins and ends for me. The conversation, though, that will take place tonight is really that of the council. You folks are in a position to make a decision tonight. I've outlined a couple of options that you may consider, but you may consider others. We heard another tonight that seemed very reasonable as well. But it's ultimately going to be the council's decision as to how they would like to proceed or not to proceed in this matter. Attorney Thorpe and I are certainly available to continue those discussions in a manner that you see fit, or we can cease and desist if you see fit. But ultimately, I think it's important that all the information that was presented, not only in my packet, but the information that was presented today and the comments that we've heard throughout this process are all important pieces of information that should be taken into consideration. And again, I believe that the information's out there, and it's ultimately the council's decision at this point as to how they would like to proceed.
Okay, Alderman Adams is joining us via phone tonight, and he wanted to make sure that we didn't get too excited and start discussing and forget about him there. So I'm going to acknowledge Alderman Adams to speak. Hopefully everyone can hear him.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Over the last 6 months, this project was on, and then it was off, and then it was on again. We're getting bits and pieces of information from a lot of different directions, causing confusion and frustration, not only amongst the council, but I'm sure the general public. And a good part of that problem is some people ignoring the proper protocol. When I was elected in 2008, I was informed by a Milton or anyone else. It is not our job to evaluate, promote, negotiate any economic development property. That is Al's job, and we certainly, none of us are qualified to do that. I would suggest in the future, on any projects, that we follow that proper protocol. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Adams. At this point, there's no better way than just open up to council discussion.
Okay, I have a question. In this memo to Milton City Council, from you, Attorney James Thorpe, and or Attorney James Thorpe and Chris Isaacson, and it was to you? Was it to you, or was it to you?
The one we sent this morning.
There was a memo that was shared with me that was intended to be given to the city council. It was shown to me in advance.
Okay, and you have a copy of it?
I do now, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to be looking at the last paragraph, and this is just for clarification for me. It says, in an effort to help the interchange be included in Department of Transportation plans, that Mulder Farms would agree to assume the city's limited costs up to $50,000 in the first phase of a sponsor agreement that would be acceptable to Mulder Farms. So that sponsor agreement is something that the city of Milton would sign with the Department of Transportation?
Yes, but the 50,000 is an estimate only. It's not a flat fee, or there's no maximum stated. By the terms of the sponsorship agreement, it's an estimate only. It could be less. It could certainly be more.
Okay, so the city of Milton would sign, would it be called a contract with the Department of Transportation?
I would call it a contract, yes.
Okay, so it's a legal document enforceable.
Yes.
We could, Mulder Farms would pay up to $50,000. We would be obligated to fulfill our duties in this contract, regardless of if it was ended up being 50,000 or 100,000. Is that correct?
Well, and it's not just development review costs. That agreement, that sponsorship agreement, if it were unchanged, and if the council did not direct me to try to improve its terms, it assigns responsibility for categories of expense that are not estimated with regard to the physical improvements, acquiring and right-of-way, and so forth. The document is written, and I apologize to any engineers present, but it reads as if it was written by an engineer. And
Howie, raise your hand.
and I think it could be improved to better define obligations, to limit obligations. If it's meant to be a limited initial review agreement, then perhaps other language with regard to later physical improvements could be taken out to limit the city's risk.
Okay, I have further questions. Mulder Farms is not obligated to pay amounts beyond that cap, nor is Mulder Farms obligated to continue with additional phases under the sponsorship agreement. At that time, Milton may continue with the sponsor agreement or terminate the agreement. Is that true, that if we we signed the sponsorship with the Department of Transportation, and it sounds like Mulder Farms could say, you know, we've spent $50,000, we're done with this agreement, and then the city of Milton would say to the Department of Transportation, let us out of this sponsorship? Is that what we would do?
Well, first of all, that it's possible that we could negotiate with the developer to improve their financial commitment. That what you're describing is their initial commitment, their guarantee. It's been described as a funding agreement, but it could be improved. Secondly, there is no opportunity for the city simply to terminate the agreement. The only way out of that agreement once you sign it is with the state of Wisconsin's permission. They would have to give consent. And again, that's without some improvement in the agreement. But the way it's written now, by its express terms, it can only be terminated by a jointly signed termination document. If the state refuses to sign it, you stay in. That concerns me.
How often does the state municipalities out of contracts?
I don't know. I can't
Okay.
tell you. If the city directed me to move forward with attempting to improve these two agreements and limit the city's risk, I would attempt to get an answer to a question like that. I would attempt to find out how the state has negotiated or altered the terms in other instances. This isn't the first time this has been done, and to see if that's possible. We could learn, and it wouldn't surprise me that the state doesn't negotiate much on these agreements. That's possible too, but I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question right now.
I will say in regards to that agreement, I do have an email from the DOT cautioning us to not sign that agreement at this time based on the lack of details regarding the proposal. It was their recommendation to me to not sign that agreement at this time because of the uncertainty of the circumstances.
What I would like to ask your opinion, would 1 month be enough to solidify all of these spoken and vague, unconfirmed, how much it will cost and what it will cover? Would 1 month be an adequate time to, because this missive arrived today, which means that you did not have time to prepare. Yeah, I trusted that we would have 24 hours notice, which it didn't cover. So I would like to ask that you review for 1 more month and then put it, put a line in the sand, then after that, they can stop changing their minds.
Well, if it's the council's desire to move forward with these two agreements, but to do so in a way that improves them and limits city risk and solidifies commitments that we've heard expressed, I would say that I probably don't need a month. If the priorities can be defined here tonight, the base priorities for such agreements, and I were to leave here and do a little work to try to give substance to that, I could probably communicate those priorities to the attorney for the developer within a week. And if, as I have been told already, approaching these priorities in a way that protects the city is unacceptable to the developer, I'll know, and I won't have to go further. If it sounds like something that might work and we were to continue on, I could use the remaining 3 weeks to start drafting what are probably going to be lengthy documents to address these concerns. So I think I'll know in a week whether if there's a framework that could be built upon. And if there's not, I'll report immediately to the city council and I'll stop all work. If the framework sounds like it could work along the lines of what's acceptable to the city council, we could continue on immediately with drafting documents.
I just find that for this document to appear today does not give us time to adequately review anything.
Well, this memo, in defense of the developer, this memo doesn't deviate too much from what they've told, what I've read in earlier emails and earlier conversations. I think it's consistent with what they've asked all along. I think this is an effort, if I could explain what they told me, it's an effort at attempting to refine down, boil down to what they consider to be a threshold issue, and that is, does the city council wish to have an interchange at Highway M and start to work toward that goal?
We've never defined a dollar amount, which is a very interesting concept.
That would be part of working toward that goal. There are a number of issues that would have to be addressed, including certainly cost. But I think the developer would like to know whether a policy decision could be made as to whether there should be an interchange at Highway M, and then we would talk about the next set of priorities, which are what does the city want to see and what do you not want to see in the agreements you would sign. We've talked about some of the problems with the existing documents on the table, but there's been no direction to my office to attempt to negotiate to improve those documents. We could attempt to do that. Or we could attempt to communicate what a framework would look like to see if there's even any reason to go forward, if the developer finds it acceptable or not. At some point, if the council, and I'm not advising this, but if the council were to say they wanted to go forward with attempting to have an interchange, if you wanted to make that policy determination, and we wanted to talk about what would be in better drafted documents to protect the city and the taxpayers, I would advise having that discussion in closed session. Establishing your negotiating parameters and priorities in open session is not advisable. It's not good for the city in any way.
Alderperson Clark?
Yes. First off, I would like to just let everybody in this room and everybody out on YouTube know that I have requested to have this item on the agenda for a very long time. So as I have been listening in during the times that I was unable, I don't know, can you hear me all right, Maxine? During those times that I have been unable to speak to you, I have felt like you were not thinking that I was listening to what you all had to say, and that is just not true. I have respect for every single person in this room. I respect all of your opinions. I think that it's important to the decision that we're making. I believe in community. I am an elected official to the city of Milton taxpayers. You must understand, if you have never sat at a table like this, it is your obligation to look into the things that can be. And unfortunately, because we've not been able to have this on the agenda, I realize that you have all become very frustrated with us not being able to talk about it. There are things that I would like to see. I'm going to get back to Dave's comment that we have a very qualified city administrator. And we have been given a lot of things, and even in my past council years, that we need to make sure that we address when we're doing these things. And I'm going to just go over some of those. The cost recovery. We need a cost recovery agreement with the infrastructure. We need to know what is going to happen with the water and the sewer. There are things going on with our sewer right now. We are going to be looking at some upgrades. What Tom Chesmore said was very true. Yep, there's going to be some water rate studies done, okay? Those things have to be done. And I, as an elected official, have to figure out how we're going to do all this, okay? With planning. So, the next thing, we need to have an agreement with the Township of Milton. We do not have any boundary agreement with the township. I believe that that is very important. I think that's important for both of our municipalities. We need to have the analysis of the utilities, and we also need to have an analysis of the public safety needs. This is important. It's going to affect everybody. And as you all know, all of our firefighters are right here, you know, and they do an awesome job, and I need to know that they're going to be taken care of. All right? We have a traffic impact study. I've heard more than once the concern for traffic in front of Milton West Elementary School. At first, I didn't know how to take that because I am a mother and I have very big concerns about how children get to and from school. I made my kids walk. I wanted them to get the exercise. Sidewalks are very important to me. Traffic in front of schools are very important to me. So as far as I'm concerned, part of what we need to look at as a council before we proceed with this is how we are going to delegate traffic, where we are going to put it, how we are going to pay for it. So my request would be to, well, first of all, let me just back up. I know that there's a lot of people in Fulton that are opposed to this project, this whole interchange and everything that goes with it. But I also know that there are people in the city of Milton that want this interchange to happen. And that means that it's my responsibility to look and see how it can be done. And I believe that that is the responsibility of our city council. I think that we have not talked about it for way too long, and we need to discuss it. And I do believe that there are things that should be done in closed session. I agree with the attorney 100%. And I think that being open about what has been done so far and listening to comments, it's important for us to listen to those comments, but in a way, I'm also feeling because we have not actually been able to respond, it's created more problems. So, first and foremost, my phone number and my email is on the city website. So if you have anything to say to me, please do. Don't do it about me.
We can't say it now. We have a boundary agreement with.
There's no comment from the audience today, Mr. Chesmore. Thank you.
This is the most screwed up mess I've ever seen.
Mr. Chesmore, there's no public comment. If you continued,
Boundary agreement with the town.
Mr. Chesmore, please. One moment, Alderman Adams. Alderperson Clark, will you complete?
Well, I can jump in there anytime I need to. Actually, I looked into that, Tom. We don't have a boundary agreement.
We threw it up when I was the mayor.
We
Let's-
don't.
Alderperson Clark, keep your comments to the council at this time, please.
Okay. I think that it's our responsibility to look into this, and I think it's our responsibility to request this information so that we are not putting the city at risk. But I also feel like if it gets to the point where it's not gonna go anywhere, and where you see that there's going to be a problem, then we need to come back and we need to look at it. I don't feel like this needs to be drug out.
I'm going to acknowledge Council President Verwink and then go back to Alderperson Adams because Council President Verwink has not yet spoken.
Okay, I'm just glad to see so many people here tonight, and especially the people who've been here so highly critical of looking at the interchange, because you heard some of the needs that the city has tonight. You never sit behind here when we have to do budget talks in October. Nobody ever shows up to listen to all the requests that we get that we have to deny because we don't have enough money to go around. And all of us in this room know it's not gonna get any better anytime soon from the state, as our funds keep getting cut every year. So then who do we keep cutting from, cutting out in the process here? Do we make our firefighters continue to sit with a building that's been crumbling ever since I've been on the council? I don't think we need to treat them like that. We had a police department, we had to build this because our roof was crumbling, and we don't have the money to raise that building like we planned to do it. But yet it's easy to sit back and say you shouldn't do something because we don't like it, when we have the responsibility to try to take care of the people and the needs of our city. And so I'm not saying I'm gonna support the interchange or I'm against it, but I'm certainly looking at what it could do, potentially, what a 500-acre development could do to help our tax base. We need to grow revenue in order to keep up with the rising cost of everything that we have. But it has to be the right deal. It has to fit the city so that the city has no obligation and cost, because otherwise we can't accept the interchange. And for those who wonder, if we don't have the interchange, what do you think Mr. Watson's plans would be without the interchange? There's aggregates sitting under there. I grew up on a farm along Highway 10 in central Wisconsin. My dad didn't want that highway to go right next to us. He didn't want to sell the farm next to us. And you know, they fought for 4 years with the state. And what did the state do? The farmers lost all their money paying lawyers. They built the highway anyway. They built a 20-acre pond right next to the farm I grew up because eminent domain will take over. So if he wants to mine aggregate, it doesn't make any difference what we want to do. If the city annexes the land, we can control it. We can create a development there that won't be a mine. So those issues are out there. So, but I think it's our obligation to take a look at this for the people of our city, for our firefighters, for our library, for our business people. We can't promise that this is going to go through, but we certainly have an obligation to look at it. That's my feeling.
Alderperson Adams.
Just a couple of comments on what Linda said. She talked about trying to get this on the agenda. The reason it's not been on the agenda is I'm sure quite a few people in the audience can attest to. The council voted several times to end all discussions and negotiations on this subject because we didn't have any documents out there now that don't tell us a whole lot. And we're having a long discussion. We still don't have any project out there. And the other item would be the closed session. We cannot do anything, I don't believe, in closed session on this topic, except maybe how we're going to negotiate. Anything else in this project's got to be done out in the open, in open session. Thanks.
Agreed. In Mr. Hulick's memo, he points out that in October of 2013, both the Economic Development Commission and the City Council unanimously supported the city's further exploration of a County Highway M interchange. That was the recommendation or the action taken at that time. A lot of the comments here tonight seem to reaffirm that, but that is direction that is definitely needed for our attorney, for our staff. What the council's desire is to continue the exploration and potential negotiation of factors that could lead to an interchange. I want to turn it over to Attorney Thorpe to see what we had talked a little bit about what direction may come out of this meeting tonight so that some further clarity can be brought to this or an end. Wonder if you could summarize that.
I think I agree with one portion of the memo received from the developer in that I think a policy decision has to be made as to whether the council wishes to explore the possibility of an interchange at Highway M. I think that has to necessarily include contemplation of a large-scale annexation. I think that goes hand in hand. If the decision is in a vacuum that you would like to explore that as an option, then I would need direction to attempt to improve upon the sponsorship agreement and the funding agreement in whatever way, shape, or form that takes to see what can be done to meet what I'm trying to glean here as to be the city priorities. What I'm hearing is that you wish to have the city expenses limited and your risk limited as to future expenses. And secondly, that if there's an offer of payment from a developer, that obligation be memorialized in such a way as to be enforceable. So that we can go forward knowing that the interchange is being pursued, but not in such a way as to create risk for the city of Milton.
But we want those other things too.
The things you described a moment ago?
Uh-huh.
I understand. What I view it as is taking steps in that direction. The first steps are going to have to necessarily be of a more general nature, and we work toward the specifics that you've talked about in terms of traffic and impact studies and such things.
And they need to be in writing.
They certainly do.
Would you be willing to be in the same room with their attorney, with Mr. Hulick, working out some of these issues together so that we don't get back and forth with, or?
Sure, absolutely. It's not a question of whether I'm willing to do it. I'll do what the city asks me to do. And that's fine. I think the way I see it moving forward is that if I'm free to do so, I would try to work up a list of not only priorities, but details as to how they might be implemented with the assistance of Mr. Hulick, and then bring it back as soon as possible to the City Council for a closed session discussion on those negotiating priorities and details before they're presented to Attorney Thorpe, unless what you'd like to have done, if you'd like to assign some responsibility to Mr. Hulick to guide those initial discussions, I can present my ideas to the developer's attorney, subject to council review, subject to your approval, but as a framework that I would support and I would recommend to see if they flat out rejected the framework and that they say it's a non-starter, then there's not much point in taking a lot of extra time, and I'd like to know that. If they say, subject to seeing the details, that framework could work, then we've got reason to move forward. That's how these negotiations go. I have heard certain things from the developer's attorney that lead me to believe that we may have a problem giving substance to some of the guarantees or commitments they've made, that they may not see those in the same way I do, and in fairness to them, they may just view them differently. And I want to get to the bottom of that. But without a direction to negotiate, I have not felt free to explore those issues with the developer's attorney.
I would like to see that with Al.
Sure. Alderperson Welch?
I have a quick question. So is it your understanding, and I guess is it the council's understanding, that the interchange does not happen without sponsorship from the city of Milton and signing a contract with the DOT?
I only believe that because that's what I've been told. I have not communicated directly with the DOT, and I was not in attendance at the meetings that I've read about that took place in Edgerton and other places. So I can only tell you what I've read. What I've read is that the sponsorship agreement is a necessary first step toward having the interchange.
And then, does the federal government have to approve it?
I don't know that I can tell you that. I believe there is a role for the federal government in this, definitely, yes.
So it wouldn't even be submitted to the federal government without a contract between the city of Milton and the Department of Transportation?
I don't know.
But we'd have to, as far as you understand, we have to sign a contract with the Department of Transportation, and we're not sure if they would ever let us out of that contract.
Well, the way it's written right now, they would not be obliged to let you out of it once you sign it, in the absence of any improvements that might be made to it.
Alderperson Adams?
I believe, looking at the recommendation that Mr. Hewlick has put on this item on the agenda, it'd be a good guideline for Attorney Thorpe to work with. He's laid it out pretty well. And you've all got that to read in front of you.
An update I can add is that, and it's been reported, we went and had a meeting with the Deputy Chief of Staff in the Governor's office the week before Christmas to see if the interchange could be rolled into the entire I-90 expansion project. We were told that we would have hopefully a word back the next week, which seemed unlikely because of Christmas. But we thought for sure we would hear something back in January, and to date we have not heard anything back one way or another. So it seems the assumption could certainly be made that without sponsorship, and potentially even with sponsorship, the interchange cannot happen. My understanding of the approvals process is that the state DOT has a role, but then also Federal Highway has a role. And it's my understanding as well that that Federal Highway decision comes from the Madison office, not DC. But I could be wrong. That's just what I've been told. Council President Burwink.
Well, I'd like to make a motion I would like to make a motion that would direct Administrator Hewlick and Attorney Thorpe to pursue this interchange project in a way that protects the city from incurring any cost to us, and that would look at the design and construction of it so that the city taxpayers would have no exposure. So if we can craft some kind of agreement, prevent us from having any exposure to the recommendations of Mr. Hewlick, that's what I'd like to make a motion directed that way.
That's a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Verwink, second by Clark. I will
Mayor,
point out there are several other questions besides just cost that should be considered.
Just for
Attorney Thorpe.
clarification, I construe the motion to include that both agreements that have been discussed here tonight would have to be improved to meet those criteria. necessary.
All inclusive agreements that need to be to get construction or design of this.
Okay.
I want all the things that we've talked about tonight. I don't know how I can encompass all of them in the motion, so.
No, it's understood from my point of view.
Is there some way of putting a time frame on this?
I would say as soon as possible.
As soon as
Strikes me
possible.
I'd prefer a date.
As soon as possible, as you could meet with the developer and
Wait,
their.
is the council willing to hold special meetings if necessary to, in closed
Yes.
session,
Oh,
to
we've got
discuss
nothing
these
better to do.
issues?
We have called
Okay.
special
I
meetings
have been
in the
told
past.
by, there's a motion on the floor and I apologize, but I've been told on several occasions by the attorney for the developer that time is of the essence. I think they would like this to move as quickly as possible. I have no reason to think that that's not true. So if that's the case and there's a need for a special meeting and a closed session soon, if we can make some progress, I would ask the council to entertain that.
We can certainly act very efficiently, but of course caution and good information and answers is the most important. But we have called special sessions in the past, and we can certainly do it again if necessary on this or any subject. There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion from the council?
Yes, I would like to say something.
Thank you.
I really can't remember when it was that we made the motion to stop all negotiations or city staff
I
from,
can, it was July.
from further engaging in talks with this development. We made that motion, and that, it didn't happen. Talks didn't stop, things continued to move on. Whether we were informed of it or whether we weren't informed of it, things kept going. I think we're at a point where we have to get the facts in order to make some sort of decision one way or the other. I think this is a good plan moving forward to do that. I want to keep an open mind. I want to do what's in the best interest of the greatest and highest good of everybody. And I think this is the path to get us there. I think we'll find out quickly. I mean, I have repeated over and over again, I have concerns with getting in a contract that we can't get out of. But even if we were to, my sense is, even if we were to say tonight, stop everything, it just wouldn't stop. So we have to have the facts to make a decision one way or the other. And it seems the only way we get the facts is to move forward in a very structured framework. And to this point, we haven't had a structured framework. So, I am in support of this motion. I also want to be clear that my expectation is that it's Al and it's Attorney Thorpe. And it's nobody else on the city council, and it's nobody else in the community. And those are the people that we have given express authority to work on this project. And that, to me, will help solve some of the other issues too that are going on.
Absolutely.
Council President Verwin, could you restate your motion so we can record it for the record?
I don't know if I can remember how I restated that. I would just like to make a motion to direct Administrator Hulick and Attorney Thorpe to look into all the aspects of constructing an agreement that would keep the city of Milton from incurring any expense and deal with all the issues related to the project of annexation.
That was the motion, that's okay with the second. I'm sorry.
Is that, you don't mention the interchange.
Or of annexation and the interchange, yes, I would. Thank you.
That was the motion by Verwink. The second was by Clark? Okay. Any further discussion? I'm gonna do a roll call vote on this, just so we make sure that we're clear. Clerk Kilby, if you'll call the roll.
Alder Adams,
With great reservations, aye.
Alder Clark. Aye. Alder Lauder.
Aye.
Alder Rush is excused. Alder Vrooring.
Aye.
Alder Welch.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion passes unanimously, 5-0, with one excused absence. Are there any other matters to discuss on this topic? Any other motions the council wishes to make?
I just want to reiterate to everybody that this decision is based on what everybody wants. Some people want this to happen and some people don't want this to happen. We have to look at all of it. It's our job. We're still friends, we're still neighbors. We want to work as close as we can with the people that are around us, but we have to have the information and we have to be able to look at it in order to make any decision. So I just want to reiterate that. And you all know where you can find me, so please don't talk around me, talk to me.
Any other discussion? Okay, agenda item 5B, it says is a break. So we'll take about a 3 to 5 minute break. 5C is discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of Jason Cowley to the Economic Development Commission. This is an agenda item that is a little bit of a formality. When we formed the Economic Development Commission, certain posts on that commission were allowed to be recommended for appointment by the Chamber of Commerce. And so they have submitted to fill the seat recently vacated by Mary Ellen Van Valen of the school district. They have appointed Jason Cowley of Cowley's Piggly Wiggly. So I have forwarded that appointment to the council for your consideration. and it requires your confirmation.
Move to accept the nomination.
Second.
It's a motion by Adams, second by Clark. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The mics are up as loud as they can.
But I can't hear me. Maybe my mic's not on. Your mic's not on. Well, okay. I'll try to.
Agenda item 5D is presentation of the Police Department 2014 Annual Report. Chief Labor.
Thank you, Mayor. The 2014 report is attached to everybody's packet. I'm obviously not going to go through every little bit of it, although I know the fire department would like that. No, Lauren? Okay. All right, a couple of minor things happened to us this year. We moved into a new police station in July. We achieved accreditation in December, and we're very proud of those accomplishments. And just a few things that I wanted to highlight in the report. We had 1,287 documented calls for service a month, which averages out to about 42 calls for service per day. On the fourth page, you'll notice that Kyle Johnson, he is our traffic safety initiative officer. And what Kyle does is he serves as a person that fills out the reports after we participate in Department of Transportation safety initiatives such as driving sober and seatbelt enforcement. And as a result of our participation in this and Kyle's attention to detail, we've received $12,000 in equipment grants over the past 3 years. And we use this for laptop computers, we use this for radar equipment and light bars, and it's been very helpful to us to augment our budgeted allotments. On page 5, under code enforcement, Officer Blaine Larson is our code enforcement officer, and he responded to over 189 calls in 2014. And this is about 100 more calls than last year, and I attribute this to the fact that we've gone out there and made a concerted effort to let people know what we do at the police department as far as code enforcement, and we received a lot more input from citizens on trying to get things the way they should be as far as our ordinances are concerned. And on page 8, we have the total calls for service for the year. That's right. Total calls for service for the year were 14,619. This is a drop of 829 calls from 2013, which is a 5% decrease in total documented calls for service. In our major case investigations, we maintain a property crime clearance rate of 33% and a violent crime clearance rate of 100%. And as you can see, these clearance rates are well above state averages, which we have maintained for all my years here and before. Underage drinking, this is a huge thing that keeps on going down every year. In 2012, we issued 24 underage drinking citations. In 2013, 16, and then in 2014, only 3. So I guess we're doing something right, and the kids are doing something right, and or we're just terrible at catching them. So I'm happy, as national statistics have shown that underage drinking is going down. Drug use, I'm not sure about, but our drinking by our youth in Milton, apparently they've gotten the message, and we're pretty happy about that. Under traffic enforcement data, we had motor vehicle accidents. This is our 3rd year in a row that it's gone down. It was 120, well, it was 101, 120, and now it's down to 88. And we're very happy with that, and we would like to attribute some of that to the traffic enforcement initiatives that we participated in. Traffic stops are down. For the year, we're at 1,069. And on our Facebook page, which has been very successful, and frankly, I am pretty happy with the way it's worked out for us, if you put a lost dog on the Facebook page, it's solved within 5 minutes because everybody's on Facebook and they see the lost dog, and it's something that I've been convinced is a big tool and very helpful for us. And we now have 2,288 friends on our Facebook page, which is 250 more followers than in 2013. And then accountability to our citizens on page 10. We had no internal affairs investigations in 2014. I received one citizen complaint in 2014. I investigated that and it was not founded. And use of force by police officers, that will be the next thing that I'm going to be presenting to you. And our budget was over $1 million in 2014. We expended $76,000 less than that, so it went back to the general fund. And then in our school resource officer program, Officer Martin is at the school full-time, except during the summer. And he's done a great job up there. And he made 21 class presentations in 2014, attended 43 school events in uniform, attended 21 staff meetings, and had, as far as I'm concerned, the most important statistic, he had 282 conferences with students in 2014, and I believe that has been a very effective program in helping us with the youth at the high school and having an impact on their lives. And that's it for the 2014 report, unless anybody has any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Chief. Really great year. Questions from the council?
I was just wondering, I know we had talked about this before, since Megan is no longer with the department, are we still going to be able to get that presentation to the library on the people that come in might have some mental health issues?
I could ask her, but we are sending an officer next month to another mental health presentation. And I believe it's next month, and that's a week-long program. So that would be even more, probably more appropriate for that type of presentation. And we'd be happy to do that.
Just want to keep everybody safe. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council?
Great job, Chief.
Thank you.
Excellent. Agenda item 5E is presentation of the Police Department 2014 Use of Force Report.
Per accreditation and per our policies on use of force, I am required to review our use of force for 2014 and report back on any trends or patterns that would indicate additional training and or policy modifications. We had 5 documented use of force incidents in 2014, and documented use of force means the officers fill out a report, and on it they go into great detail why they did what they did, what actions they took, and why they took those actions. And we are required every time that we physically use force on someone to fill one of those out. So we had 5 in 2014. 4 of the incidents involved subjects that were to be arrested. However, they did not think they should be arrested, and they did not comply with commands from the officers. We then try to gain physical control of the subjects by moving to escort holds, which were also unsuccessful. And at that time, 4 out of the 5 were taken to the ground, or it's called decentralizing. I don't know why we call it that, but that's what it is. And it basically involves picking someone up and putting them on the ground and putting handcuffs on them, trying to gain control of them. And in those 4 encounters, the tactic was successful and no further use of force was required. We did have one pain compliance tactic that was used on a juvenile, and that was successful. He also resisted being taken into custody. We did not use tasers, we did not use guns, we did not use batons, we did not use pepper spray, so I would like to commend the officers for not going into the next level without first trying physical control of a subject. So I was very happy to see that we were not using weapons to gain compliance and use force on people in 2014. So after reviewing all the use of force incidents for 2014, I did not see any situation that required us to change any of our procedures or policies. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the council? the performance and professionalism of our police department should be and is a source of tremendous pride for the city and for all citizens. So thank you very much for the report, and thanks for the hard work to all the men and women in the department. Moving on, agenda item 5F is discussion and possible action regarding the police department city hall project update.
I will just start this before I turn to Dan Nelson. The purpose of this agenda item is kind of twofold. We're at the kind of end of this project of the building that we're sitting in, and we would like to present the kind of the information as to where we are today with this project and with the fund balance. If folks don't know, Dan Nelson knows his numbers, as the courier pointed out. If you don't know that, he's got it framed in his office. So I'll turn it over to Dan to explain how he has done his duty.
Thanks, Al. As Al said, this is just some housekeeping to say that we did come under budget for this building. The unfortunate part when I was compiling everything is there was a mathematical error by the former treasurer, and the bond proceeds in 2013 had a requirement of having $150,000 set aside for some library demolition. And when the project costs were projected, that was not taken into consideration when the budget was established. So the funding sources were short by about $150,000. But the good news is the city had cash in its capital projects fund to help cover a majority of that. And what you see before you in resolution 2015-1 is just that additional $24,000 that is needed to cover that gap. And then the second resolution is just the housekeeping issue of the utilities were slated to pay for us about 20% of the construction of the city hall side of the building, and that I could not find any documentation formalizing that. So resolution 2015-2 formalizes that. It'll keep our auditors happy, and it'll make me happy. So if you have any other questions about anything on here, just let me know.
The agenda item we're on now is the budget update. If the council has any questions on that, now would be the time to ask them, and then we'll move on to resolutions and specific action.
I was wondering if we could get an update on what has been on our list of things. Where is that? Where can I put that on here?
The punch list?
Yes.
Mr. Hulick?
The punch list is complete. All items on the punch list have been satisfied either by the contractor or by city staff. So the punch list is done. There are some outstanding items that need to be remedied in regards to the state inspection report, and those are design oversights or design flaws that we're still working through with the contractor. We have a meeting next week, Tuesday, I believe, to hopefully start to formalize a plan in order to address those issues. But those were design flaws in the construction project, not necessarily just oversights or things of negligence. So the punch list is done, and we're addressing those state inspection report lists still ongoing.
And so the design flaws, is that something that we will be covering, or will we go back to those people who we were counting on?
It will be strongly my recommendation that we are not responsible for any of those adjustments or reconfigurations in order to get those up to the proper code that the state requires. So it is not our responsibility based on improper design, in my opinion.
Any further discussion on the project budget update? If not, then we will move on to agenda item 5G, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 2015-1, 2014 budget amendment capital project fund. You have that resolution before you. If
I
it is
make a
accepted.
motion that we approve the resolution 2015-1. Second.
Motion by Clark, second by Lauder. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 5H, discussion and possible action regarding 2015-2 budget amendment for sewer fund. You same story. You have that in front of you. If there's no trouble with it, the motion to approve the resolution would be in order.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution 2015-2.
Second.
So motion by Brewing, second by Lauder. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 5I, getting very deep into the alphabet. Discussion and possible action regarding the city's 2014 general fund position. Finance Director Nelson?
What you have before you is preliminary with a majority of the entries that I believe that we'll need for year-end close and invoices and things of that nature that I've accrued back to 2014. And the reason I brought this forward is we have a request in the 2014 or 2015 budget to fund the city's portion of some fire capital equipment totaling $350,000. And one of the things when I was looking at this, I said, do we, instead of borrowing like we had kind of talked about last fall during the budget process, do we allocate a portion of our fund balance so we don't have to borrow and we don't have to worry about debt capacity on this particular item?
What is the specific item?
Lauren, what are the?
There's several items on there. There's the replacement of engine 131, refurbishing and rechassing of ambulance 121, $5,000 for updating the building plans, and some computer items that were of nature.
So that.
I'm sorry, the 350,000 is just our portion of it?
Correct.
Okay.
And so rather than borrow for that, while being cognizant of the city's fund balance policy to try to maintain 25% of non-spendable and unassigned fund balance, at keeping that number at 25%, we have the opportunity here to use funds for a one-time purchase for those items that Lauren mentioned. And so one of the things I'd like to get out of this discussion is that approval to not seek a method of borrowing for those items. And I think it's important also to note that in the last 2 years, the city has, if the $300,000 goes through tonight, that we have taken $800,000 of fund balance, and we have still maintained our 25% threshold. That is pretty remarkable in the last 2 years to help get a lot of projects done and to help keep the the amount of outstanding debt in the city as low as possible while maintaining appropriate balances that the rating agencies like.
Great. Administrator Hulick?
One thing I just want to point out, first, thanks Dan for putting all this information together in a concise fashion, but what I think is important to note, not only for the council, but for the public out there, is Milton is in a very good position when it comes to their finances. We heard a lot of conversation a couple of weeks ago at the listening session about concerns about Milton's financial position. I've heard some of those comments out in the community. We have a very elevated debt level, debt capacity. We do. And that's something that I was concerned about when I took the job. I'm still concerned about today. But one of the reasons that we're able to have that elevated debt level is because of these types of pieces of information. A 25% fund balance is an impressive number. Best practices usually ask for about 20%. Most communities are lucky to have 10. We have 25. And that's how we're able to keep an A1 bond rating with an elevated debt level of 75%. As we're going to see in the next item, we're not made of money, but with the money that we do have, we're very responsible with. We've done a lot of research over the last month since I've been here to talk about our tax rates. Milton is consistently the lowest taxed municipality in Rock County. Consistently. And we hear comments about this or that or the other, but the facts speak for themselves. And this is a very important document a very important piece of information that I'm proud to be a part of, even though I've only been here for 6 months. There's been a lot of work to get to this point, and it's important, and I just don't want that to be taken lightly, because I think it's a very important piece of information, not only for today but moving forward for the state of Milton.
We are aggressive, and we have been aggressive over the years in the way that we manage our finances, the way that we take debt, the way that we use fund balance most recently. It's important to note that when we return this kind of money to the general fund, our expenses came in approximately where we thought they'd be. The revenues came in better than anticipated, which is good. It means we didn't overtax. It means some things just went our way, and that's good for the city taxpayers. So the discussion tonight centers, though, around the use of $350,000 of cash in order to pay our half of fire capital and, to a lesser extent, a little bit of planning dollars. So that's the discussion tonight. If you have questions for Dan or Al, please ask them now. I'll open it up to the council.
Would the purchases take place this year then?
That is the plan.
That we
Well,
would spend the money and buy the
because
equipment?
the ambulance portion will definitely take part of this year. There's a portion of the fire engine that will have to be paid for this year, but the rest of it will actually go out into 2016 because of the time lag for constructing the vehicle.
So we'll order it, but not get it till 2006, is that?
We'll order it, hopefully we'll be able to order it by the 1st of April, because we have to get bids and do all the process there. And then, from that point, then it gets scheduled to be built, and we're looking at about a 9-month build period. So if we get it online in May, we're looking out into January, February of 2016 before we receive it. What we do need to do is pay for the chassis prior to going into build. So that part of it we would have to pay for up front, and then the remainder of it would be paid for upon delivery.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Okay. Mr. Nelson, what's the motion that you're looking for tonight?
Looking for approval of using $300,000 of the city's fund balance to help finance the purchase of those capital pieces of equipment that Lauren mentioned.
Second.
Motion by Adams, second by Clark. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. You said the number 350,000 and then 300,000, which is it?
It's 300,000 of fund balance because we have 50,000 that was part of the 2015 budget that we had scheduled as a debt service payment.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 5J is discussion and possible action regarding potential financing plan for the library and Parkview Drive.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to read a statement into the record prior to this discussion.
You may do that, Chief.
Yesterday morning, I read the agenda for tonight's meeting and came to the agenda item 5J, discussion and possible action regarding potential financing plan for the library in Parkview Drive. I was quite shocked to discover that if this financing plan was implemented, no other new major projects could be started until the year 2020. This came as a surprise to me, as the Fire Commission and the members of the department were told 5 years ago we would be building a much needed new station in 2016 through 2018. That the project would begin. On February 2nd, 2015, in discussion with Mayor Frazier and Administrator Hulick, we were advised that the fire station was a priority and that the 2016-2018 would be the time frame to build. There was discussion about other projects, such as the Parkview Drive issue, but again, everything appeared to be on track. The history behind the proposed date came from an attempt to build a public safety building in 2010. The firm was selected to do the project, and plans were drawn with an estimated cost of $5 million. Both the city and the town stated they were unable to take this project on at that time. The city was so concerned the town would not be able to have funding available, they requested that both municipalities pass a resolution stating that in 2016 through 2018, the building would go forward. This resolution was agreed upon and passed by both municipalities. This timetable has been discussed numerous times at fire commission meetings and has been reviewed by both municipalities at budget time each year. At none of these discussions were comments made that this would not be feasible, nor that the city was considering funding other options rather than previously agreed upon fire station. In fact, in the 2015 budget, $5,000 was put to the budget to update the plans for the building in 2016-2017. This update was funded by both municipalities. I was advised by the commission to come up with a timetable for construction and provided to the commission members with a building plan schedule with a finish date of 2017. I have never been told that this was not feasible, yet as I was told recently, this has not been in the city's plan for quite some time. There's been much negative press about the funding of the fire department in the news, and unfortunately this has been now tied to the capital improvement of a building. It has been demoralizing for the members and troubling that this is continually aired. The facts need clarification. First, this is a matter of underfunding, not going over budget. Next, the current underfunding issue was caused by City Administrator Schmidt when Chief Chris Lucas at the time was told the funding of the department had to go from being fully funded by each municipality to the current method of estimating what the revenue will be and subtracting that from the operational expense to come up with what each municipality would need to pay. This is not how any of the other departments within the city are funded. The police department has revenue, but their budget is determined from the expense side and not reduced by the income. The income goes back to the revenue side of the budget to help offset the expenses. I made this suggestion to the commission as one of the methods to end the shortfalls, and this will be discussed in our funding of the 2016 budget. It is very difficult to anticipate what revenue will come back from ambulance billing because it is completely dependent on payment of individuals' invoices and what insurance will cover. The fire department administration has always been frugal with its budgeting requests. Nothing extravagant is requested, simply items to meet the needs of the department and the community it serves. Our equipment is functional for our needs and we are always cognizant of costs, as well as the limitations of the municipality's levy limits. We have complied with requests to reduce our budget and make do with less. There have been 2 studies, both of which recommend the building be replaced and equipment upgraded. So far, the equipment has been upgraded and we thank everybody for doing that, and we have made changes to our staffing, but yet the building remains. Now yet another study is proposed to be done to evaluate funding and the makeup of the commission. I hope that history does not repeat itself with the recommended changes being ignored. The final comment I will make is on the morale of the members. All of us have been looking forward to improved living conditions and a better, more logical layout for the needs of today and tomorrow. At the meetings with both Mayor Frazier and Councilperson Welch, recruitment and retention of members was discussed. Mayor Frazier cited the new building as one method for recruitment and retention. The members of the department work very hard to serve the community, and it is important that their efforts not go unrecognized. But yet again, not providing this as was promised, it may give them an impression that their contribution to both the city and the town is undervalued, thus negatively affecting morale, recruitment, and retention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I'm going to, at this time, because the agenda item specifically addresses financing plan for 2 other capital projects, I'll turn it over to Dan Nelson to talk about what's being proposed.
Yeah. Before we turn it over to Dan, I just want to make sure it's clear that how this item was placed on the agenda was at the last council meeting, at the last P&F meeting 2 weeks ago. Staff was directed to create a funding strategy to fund the library. On this evening's agenda, as Dan will present shortly, we have presented that plan. We understand that there are competing interests, and as I just explained, the city's financial position as well, but we're not made of money, so some tough decisions are going to have to be made, and that's going to be up to the discretion of the council. We've put forth a plan to fund the library and fund Parkview, and that will inevitably push back some other projects if that is the way that the council chooses to go. But that was the direction we were given, and we presented that information, and we're certainly available for questions, the chief and myself, and Director Brooks as well. But I'll turn it over to Dan to kind of explain how that process works. But I wanted to make sure it's clear how we got here. This wasn't a decision made in a vacuum. This wasn't anything that just kind of snuck up on us. This was discussed at a Personnel and Finance Committee meeting and voted on unanimously to bring this funding plan forward 2 weeks ago.
One of the things after we had that Personnel and Finance meeting a few weeks ago, we looked at, because of the smaller dollar amount of $750,000, we looked at, would there be ways, instead of doing the traditional competitive bidding process with rating calls and all that, would there be interest locally, meaning from our financial institutions in town, to possibly underwrite and give the city a loan? We are still in the process of hearing from them. We don't have a definitive answer, yes or no, on that. But I believe it is a very viable option, and it would save issuance costs, it would save time, it would save a lot of the typical process. We would only recommend something like that if the bids come in similar to what we would anticipate receiving in a competitive market, and we have told all those institutions the same. And then the Parkview kind of came out of the notion, if we do need to go for a larger issue of financing, perhaps it's more valuable, so to speak, to have $1.3 million in a borrowing package. One thing we do know is that if Parkview is not completed, it'll continue to be patched as needed, and the road will probably continue to worsen. And the proposed mill and overlay will help extend that useful life of that road. And the $750,000 contribution for the library, making it code compliant, will provide the public assistance that is needed in addition to the ongoing fundraising that is going on. What we also know is that regardless of anything, any $2 to $3 million project or potential project would not be able to be addressed until 2017. And that's assuming we did nothing else right now. And then we still have issues potentially with the library and with Parkview that would still be hanging over the entire city. There are no easy answers. There's 3 worthwhile projects. This is one solution to address 2 out of the 3. In the memo, I do address 2020 being the year when we'd be able to address any other additional issues. That comes down to an affordability issue. From a legal debt capacity standpoint, we could take on a $2 to $3 million borrow in 2018. It would just depend on if the council at that time felt comfortable with an elevated debt service payment for a few years till the city's debt falls to something more manageable, like it's shown in my chart in 2020.
What I understand from our conversations earlier, if we did neither Parkview nor the library funding, realistically you felt 2019 was when we would be looking at a fire department building. Is that
If we
correct?
did no projects right now?
Correct.
2017 was when we could take a $2 to $3 million project.
And if the council desired to move forward with this borrowing, what's the new date?
It would be 2018, and then it becomes an affordability issue.
Right. So the difference, the options, and I don't mean to oversimplify, are we can either have all 3 projects done by 2018, or one of the projects done by 2017. Is that correct?
The debt taken out to do them.
Yep. We're correct.
Right.
Yep.
I think that's an important distinction. The debt would be taken out in 17, the project would be completed in 18. I want to make sure that distinction is clear.
But it is true that we could have all 3 projects funded then by 2018, or one of them funded by 2017.
Correct. And it would also, if all 3 projects, if the 2 before you tonight go through tonight, then the question also becomes an affordability issue in 2018. And one of the things that none of us in this room know is what is the city's equalized value going to look like 3-4 years from now? None of us have a crystal ball. So in all this analysis that I've provided, I've just assumed that equalized value would stay flat. Obviously, it could go up, it could go down. But one thing we do know is we don't want to get much higher than 85-86% of the city's debt capacity. And I believe both these models demonstrate that. And also doing these two projects now and then waiting a couple of years and taking on $2 to $3 million in 2018 keeps us at an elevated debt level in that 80-85% range, but doesn't push us to that 90% range that probably would not be good for the community.
Discussion from the council or other questions? Yep, Alderperson Adams.
Yeah, go back a few years, the council was sitting, trying to make a decision on whether to build a fire station or public works. We went with public works and told the fire department they had to wait a little bit. When we got done with public works, we decided to go with the police station, told the fire department had to wait a little bit. And when the police department project got going, then the council, city council, or city administration offices were added to it, the library was added to it, and each time I and several other council members asked, what about the fire station? And we were told that's not a problem, we'll be able to do it. Now, after Personnel and Finance Committee meeting last week, or last 2 weeks ago, we asked that a funding feasibility study be done, and it's presented here. It was just to see if there's a way that it's feasible. Now, to even think that you're going to close this out to 2020 after making a commitment to the department, making a commitment to the township that you're going to fund this station is absurd. These people have waited long enough. I heard the comment today that the councilperson said they can wait a little longer. No, they can't wait a little longer. They waited long enough. I support the library, but I cannot look a citizen in the eye and tell them the library remodeling is more important than a public safety facility. There's no way.
I just have a question for.
Microphone.
Sorry, I have a question for Mark. I think that we need to have a discussion on the fire department and what is happening here with the funding. How far can we go with a discussion?
Your discussion so far has been limited to the impact of this funding plan on the fire department project, and that's permissible. That's part of your decision-making process on this funding option, and that you need to look at what the impact of this funding option is on various, goals, financial goals you have for the city. So to that extent, it's fine, because you're not going on and discussing specifics of what would be involved in the fire department project. So that to that extent, it's fine. I would caution you won't get into that, and the chief hasn't. He's just focused on what impact this financial proposal would have on the building, and so to that extent, it's fine.
I have a question for Howie. Where is the full completion of Parkview Drive, rather than just a mill and repave? Because I know that we've got some plumbing things that we need to do, drainage and water and all that kind of stuff.
You want to know what the complete reconstruction cost would eventually be? Okay, eventually, if you did the complete finish of Parkview Drive, where you did the water main, sanitary sewer, and street reconstruction, you'd be at $4,970,000 as the estimate. This estimate is just for a mill, like the 2 inches of milling off the blacktop, and doing probably about 30% curb and gutter work. Be similar to High Street when we had the stimulus money for that project, where we did, the blacktop and the curb and gutter. So, and this, the 4.9 million, that replaces sanitary sewer and water main. It also would do curb and gutter, sidewalks, storm sewer work for a complete reconstruction. You'd have to do that if you do get a development on the south end of town, because you're gonna have to increase your main sizes for capacity and water flow. The 595,000, that would, that'll resurface the road and make it a nice street to travel on again, and along with some drainage issues take care of. You're probably, just to be upfront with you, probably after 5 years, you're gonna start seeing some deterioration, and probably after 10 years, you'd probably be looking at another repave at some time, similar to High Street when that got repaved a couple of times. Underneath the surface of Parkview, there's concrete, so that goes up and down, similar to North Clear Lake in the winter, where you get the ridges on the road and then they drop in the summer. That's just because that used to be Highway 26, and there's still concrete underneath the surface. So it's a fix for, I know we say 5 years. It usually ends up being, for us, 12 to 15 when it actually gets the second part of it. But you'll start seeing deterioration. But it is if you don't fix the road, all we can do is just keep patching it, put greater patches on it, and just patch the potholes. So, which is pretty much, eventually just wasted money too, because they're just gonna, every time we plow snow, they come back out, or even sweep the streets. So just the traffic on it just gets rid of those small repairs.
I'm gonna add.
If you did have a development occur, you would have to change the mains and stuff anyway, so you'd have to upgrade the entire construction if that ever happened. Right now, we don't have that I know of a developer that's got a plan for doing anything.
I'm gonna ask, because that $4.9 million number sounds huge, I'm gonna ask Dan to provide a little clarity as to what the funding would be like for that at some point, just so the council has it in their head, because that's not all general levy.
I would also like to know, where is that complete project on the capital calendar? That project calendar.
Do you want me to do that one? The Parkview Drive has always been part of, I guess, some people call it the main three projects: the library, the fire department, and Parkview Drive. But it's always been kind of just as money was available or as a development occurred. So if you had a development, you'd move it up, but it hasn't really ever been 100% prioritized. The Parkview Drive hasn't, compared to the other projects. It's just something we always knew we had to do. So on the capital improvement project, it's listed as, whenever we can do it. So
The total reconstruction for Parkview is just under 5 million, with 2.4 million being general levy tax dollars. So that would be the part that would affect the actual tax rates and our debt capacity. The other 2.5 million would come from utilities. And after talking with our financial advisors, what we would probably do with that, since we are at elevated debt levels, would be to take out utility revenue bonds. We've done that many times, where you basically pledge the revenues of the utility against, use that to repay the bonds. So that's how we would handle that. And then a full reconstruction will last how long, Howie?
we usually figure 20 years for the street surface, and the sewer and water mains, once they're installed, I mean, some of them we have some are from 1923, but so you don't expect those to wear out for 50 to 60 years once those are installed. So.
And I didn't map out what does 2.4 million look like and where would it fit, but just my initial gut reaction would be, if we did a $2 to $3 million city portion of a fire station in that 2018 timeframe, the earliest we'd probably be looking at would be 2022, 22 or 23, the year 2022 or 2023, tongue twister, to be able to take on like a $2.4 million project, unless city's equalized value or something were to dramatically change. But once again, it would become an affordability factor.
TIF 6 will close in 2026, and you know, at this point, that's a far way out, and it would be hard to determine what the fund balance would be, the cash fund balance would be at that TIF, because there's still outstanding principal payments left to be made, and we're certainly hopeful that there's other development opportunities within that TIF district as well. So 2026 would be the first time we would be able to see that cash fund balance or those dollars returned to the tax levy.
I think it's important to point out, for the last number of years, the council 7 or so years ago, was handed a city that had essentially ignored most of its infrastructure and facility needs for a long time. We are rounding the corner. There are 3 more substantial projects that will bring us into, kind of up to speed where we hope to be, and then hopefully future councils will maintain them as necessary, so we don't get to these points. But I don't believe it is an option to allow our fire station to stay the way it is. I don't believe it's an option to let the library stay the way it is, and I don't believe it's an option to let the Parkview Drive just continue to be cold patched for the next 10 years. I don't think anybody who drives that street would disagree with that. It's a difficult decision for the council, but that's why we make so much money to take these positions.
I just have a question. So, because I've heard two or three different figures, so I don't, or years. So if we do library and just mill and pave, is that what we're talking about?
Yep, the 1.35 million.
Is it 2017, 2018, 2020 when we would look at
we would have the ability to take on debt in 2018. The question would become, if you look at the bottom of that sheet, you see what the tax rate is on debt service as a portion. It's $2.94. If you were to add $3 million to that number goes up substantially.
So
the drop off is really 2021, which is why in the memo I said 2020, because I was referencing more of an affordability rather than an ability to actually do it. And those are 2 completely different things. And I probably should have done a better job of delineating that. But we do have the capacity in 2018, assuming we do not take on any more debt, between 1.35 today and $2 to $3 million in 2018.
When would we start building the fire station, though? Not until 2019, or when would we start building it?
My guess, without knowing the particulars of the plan, I don't think we're at that level yet. But I think the simplest way to look at it is if we don't do Parkview and the library today, the quickest we could fund the fire department would be 2017 with the construction in 2018, completion in 2018. That's if we don't do Parkview and we don't do the library today. If we do Parkview and the library today, the soonest we'd be able to fund the fire station would be 2018 with a completion in 2019.
Which would also allow for Parkview to have a full reconstruction in 22 or 23. And that would get us our good 5 to 7 years when we'd be looking at doing that reconstruction.
So then, what happens, okay, if we do not do, let's say we go through with the library and we go through with Parkview, and then the fire station building is put in 2018? Is that what you said?
That would be when we would have the debt capacity to be able to take on $2 to $3 million.
Okay, all right, so then 2018 we do that?
Yeah, we could take that debt borrowing. I'm guessing we'd probably take it sometime in the spring or the summer. and get that cash in the bank.
Okay, then in the meantime, it's 2015. So in the next 3 years, what do we do with the building that they're in? Anybody have any
Well,
thoughts on that? Because
Yes, I don't have a good answer to that question, other than the fact that unfortunately, they would be in the same condition 2 years down the road that they are today.
That's unacceptable.
One of the things that has been a mitigating factor to some of the original concerns was the space, and we've done a good job of mitigating that for their equipment with the use of the DPW garage, but that doesn't affect the living quarters and a lot of the things that are the issues with them.
Yeah, I think the thing that was difficult for me to wrap my head around is the fact that no matter what we do, they are definitely going to be in that facility for at least a couple more years. That's the fact. That's the position of the city at this time. To say nothing of whatever the town's position may be, but that is the fact. We can do what we can to mitigate, as Mr. Hulick says, but that is the fact. It's unfortunate, but it is. That doesn't change it.
Howie, one question on Parkview. How long can Parkview hold up in its current state when doing a mill and overlay would no longer be a viable option?
Well,
Your guess. Just a guess, because I know there's a lot of factors that go into that question.
it depends, some of it's weather conditions, some of it's, the one kind of different question too is if you do get a development in there, then you're gonna have to move up the reconstruction to when that happens. So that's kind of a wild card or something that you're gonna have to look at too, is at some point, if the south end of Parkview and the south end of the city does develop, you're gonna have to do the reconstruction anyways, no matter which year that happens. So, but otherwise, as far as the street, it's just gonna continue to, you can patch it and you can do other things, like you can cut out bigger sections and patch that, but you're gonna have to put more money in your blacktop budget each year just to do, repairs that eventually, aren't gonna be there. So, you can continue that road, it's not gonna fall apart completely, but you're gonna have to put a lot more patching material into it, like not just pothole filling, you're gonna have to cut sections out and actually, patch, 30 or 40 foot sections of it, 40 by 20 pieces. Similar to what you see like on a water main break when we do those, but you'll have to continue to do more of those. So, I'd say you can just keep patching on it for, at least 5 years probably, but it's never gonna get any better, so.
But I think, again, that is the fact. We don't have the capacity to take out the 2.4 to do it the way it needs to be done. So just like a couple of years ago with the police station, the council's going to have to dump a bunch of bad money into buying a little bit of time to fix a problem the right way. It's not a good situation, but this council didn't choose to be in that situation. That was decided for us 10 years ago or more.
Mr. Mayor, I would, and I don't want to make this into a library versus fire department, because I believe that the projects all have merit and need to be done. But some of the comments I heard tonight were about the public safety end of the building. And we have been in non-code compliance with our sleeping quarters and our living conditions for at least 6 or 7 years now. And have tried to get money to do just the patchwork to get it done, and have not had that go through because of the costs that have gone on. In addition to that, we have not done any repairs on our building with the understanding that we were going to be moving. And so our building has deteriorated even faster than what is before, and I'm concerned with the mold and other things that are in that building now because we have not put the money into that building. I will not be able to play catch up, no matter how much we put into that building, to make it code compliant and viable with it as it is now. And again, I'm not trying to make this a library versus fire department issue, but we have had this promise made, or been told that this was what was going to happen, and have based all of our budgets and all of our work on that idea. So I'm not gonna say any more. I'm sorry to belabor the point, and again, I'm not trying to downgrade the library's needs, but we have people that spend the night in a non-code compliant structure, and I don't believe anybody stays overnight in the library and has to sleep there. So I can't give enough information or make it plain enough, I guess, to what will happen if we have to stay there. So I will leave it at that.
I haven't said anything yet, but I feel disappointed by this whole discussion because I felt when we talked about budget back when we built this building, that it would not be an issue to build the fire department back when we talked about building this building. That's the discussions. Nancy, do you agree with me?
Right.
That's what I remember.
That is what we recall.
And now I'm sitting here
is-
having to pit myself between the fire department, which truly needs everything that they're asking for, and the library, which as an educator, how can I vote against it? So it makes me feel bad that I was misled back in 2014 that we couldn't do this project when we said we could, because that's the way I feel right now sitting here, that I have to make a decision that somebody's not going to like, because I made a decision back in 2014, which I thought we could do this and take on this project of the fire department. But now, I found out this week that isn't the case, and that's what I'm disappointed with.
In fairness, the council made almost no decisions on this building in 2014.
Well, whenever we made that decision,
The building was purchased in, I believe, 2012. The construction was planned and bid in, I believe, early 2013. We worked on this building for almost 3 years. That's the fact.
but in that discussion, I remember saying that we still targeted the fire department back around 2016. Am I right, Nancy?
Correct.
Am
That
I-
is
or am I-
what,
am I
2016
fabricating this?
was the number we were envisioning.
Well, does the loss of the 17.6 million in equalized value have anything to do with why it's now 2018? Or does that, because I don't know how that.
I was trying to find out what the equalized value was in 2013. I'm trying to find that right now to see.
Well, I know from 2013 to 2014, we lost 17.6 million in equalized value. That's on the state's site.
Yeah, that number stacks. What that?
I mean, is that why it's pushed back to 2018?
That would affect the city's borrowing capacity by $850,000. So there's probably that's a big number.
This is why I wish we had more citizens here so they can hear our dilemma. And for those that speak out against looking at the interchange in our city, this is why it's so important if we can try to build value. Now, again, that's a different discussion, but building value is important for any of these projects. And so that's why that could help if we could build value through business coming.
Yeah, every $10 million plus or minus affects the debt capacity by $500,000. Our legal limit.
I mean, that's not the fire department's fault that the city of Milton lost $17.6 million. That has nothing to do with your budget, has nothing to do with how well you do your jobs, but it does have a significant impact on our borrowing capacity. So that's what I wanted to make clear is, especially when Don brought it up, is it's pushed back through, and it really isn't anything that the city did wrong because the state is the one that determines our equalized value.
And I'm not saying that the city did anything wrong.
Oh, no.
But my decision was based upon when we did this, that we could do this in 2016.
Right. And it was based on different equalized value that we thought we were going to have.
Okay, so we're talking about, from what you just said, we're talking about a difference in a year, right?
Correct.
Okay, so because we are in a joint situation here, can we look to the township to start it up and then we come in after the fact, or is that not a possibility?
It's not the way it works.
I know you can't stand up and talk, and you either, Brian.
Dan, Mr. Nelson, I think what Alderperson Clark is suggesting, that the town would begin to pay for the fire department and the city would come in later. Can you address that kind of a concept?
I might need Mark's help here, but I believe the agreement that we have with the town is that we are a 50-50 partner and we share in all the costs. And what we would have to do in a situation like that is that the town would have to take on more than its 50% share, basically with an IOU to the city that we would pay we would reimburse the town in order to get the project going sooner rather than later.
And I don't want to speak for the town, but we believe that the town has the borrowing capacity to do that, and certainly their tax rate is about 25% or less on 1,000 than ours, but that doesn't seem like a fair way to operate a 50-50 partnership. Regardless, I mean,
And we'd have to see how that works with levy limits and all that other stuff. When you would owe a municipality money, can that be treated the same as other long-term debt? I don't know the answer to that question.
So what does the motion do tonight? What are you asking for us to let you do? Just to come back? My understanding was it was so we could come back with final figures at a second meeting.
Correct. Like I said when we first started this conversation, was we've pitched the idea to the local financial institutions, but we haven't heard back from them to see if it's even financially feasible to do the plan that's on page 2 of my memo with those repayment terms, and the hope would be that we hear something back in the next week, and Al and I look at it and go, yep, that would be a reasonable competitive market bid. So we are going to save the taxpayers debt issuance costs and all that other stuff, and bring forth that bank note for authorization to sign that on March 18th.
And then in the meantime, we have a joint meeting with the township.
Next week, yep.
And so then that's probably a good time for us to just go over the whole thing, the whole fire department.
Right.
Well, I know that was the intention of the meeting.
So
right?
this would not be the final vote on anything.
No, we've got I guess I'd call it the feelers out, and we'll determine if they're good market rates for the citizens of the city, and if we believe they are, we would bring forth, assuming you guys agree in concept to the concept, we would bring forth that bank note for authorization to sign in a couple weeks.
So you haven't completed the whole process of researching a funding option?
Well, the options you see before you are the terms that we told both financial institutions we would be game for. We just don't know the interest rate. What I plugged in here was 2%. You know, is there much of a difference between 2 and 2.25%? Not really.
Well, I think we can move, if we can move forward, we can have our meeting, our joint meeting, and then our final vote would be the last meeting in March.
Correct, the 17th.
That's correct. Yeah, I think what staff is looking for here is direction from the council. There's a reasonably significant amount of work that would have to go into getting that lending set in place, not just for us, but with lending institutions who we would like to work with in the future too. If the council did not have an appetite for that, certainly that would impact any number of people, not the least of which is the library and the people who have to drive on Parkview Drive. But if you desire to see those, in final presentation, the anticipation was that would be at the next meeting in March, with potentially some of this work to be, especially on Parkview Drive, potentially done this year.
I would like to see us come back with us at the next meeting with the definite information.
Is that a motion?
Yeah. Yes, I'll just make it into a motion. And then I would like to have the discussion at our joint meeting that we're gonna be having
Let's
this
have
week.
a motion on the financing first.
On the financing of the fire, the library, or the Parkview?
Clarify your motion, please.
The financing of Parkview and the library.
Where did the fire department fit?
What's the motion now?
If, I
Current-
can't do a motion with the fire department because
not
it's
on the
not on the
agenda.
agenda.
Stand by. I believe Alderperson Clark's motion is to direct city staff to prepare final information and documents relating to a $750,000 borrowing for library infrastructure and $600,000 for mill and overlay of Parkview Drive. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
There's a motion by Clark, second by Verwink. Any further discussion on that motion?
So how does that affect the motion we aren't talking about?
We can't talk about it, it's not on the agenda.
We can talk about that, but there's a specific motion on the floor here. We can talk about how this impacts
Oh,
other
okay.
Right.
borrowing.
It pushes back the potential to do a $2 to $3 million borrowing. Instead of doing that in 2017, we'd be looking at doing that in 2018.
I guess somewhere I missed what happened in 2016 when we had talked about building a fire station. I'm just missing that part of the lack of conversation.
We talked about do you wanna talk about
There was the drop in equalized value,
Correct.
so that affected our ability to borrow by $800,000 to $900,000. That changes the percentages.
And who's to say that won't happen again?
No
There's
one's to say it
guarantee.
won't happen again, but we're taking pretty serious steps to try and make sure the opposite happens by developing our east side and our two downtowns.
Part of what was going on in 2016 is we didn't have a designated location for the fire department, but I don't know how much more we can talk about it. I mean, we can continue to discuss it if you want to, but
well, I think we have to vote on the
Well-
motion.
Yeah, so the motion tonight is a long one, but essentially it's to direct staff to finalize an option for potential council consideration at the next meeting for both the library and Parkview Drive. Is there any further discussion on that item?
Now, are you in Parkview Drive resurfacing it or
It
digging the
was
whole
the
thing up?
$600,000 for mill and
Cheap one.
overlay, if you can call it that.
Well, unfortunately, being a landlord on Parkview Drive, I know how many times the sewer has backed up and flooded. It is a concern that, when your sewer backs up, you notice it.
Right.
Repeatedly.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 3-2. Okay, are there any additional motions?
yes, I would like to make the motion that we have on our next agenda the current strategic plan for the fire department and building concerns. I'd like to take a look at how we can incorporate this with what we just did. Our new building.
I don't know, I apologize, I didn't understand the motion. I was a little preoccupied.
I'm sorry, I'm not being.
I was
I'm not
a little
aware that-
preoccupied with watching the firefighters all walk out before their agenda item was complete. But so I apologize. I was a little shocked by that. Can you repeat for the limited audience that remains for this very important item?
Nancy, did you want to make that motion?
Dave, help me. What we need to know is the financial obligations that the city has to build a new fire station and when that will come to pass.
I do have a question. Have we updated the cost estimates on the?
No, we have not.
Yeah.
That's on the budget.
It's gotten to the point, the initial steps were for them revamping the plans to fit on
Right.
the property now.
Right.
So that's all that's been done so far. They are waiting to hear where the next step goes to get some basic costs. In looking at the square footage that we have, on this particular plan is about 26,000 square feet. And if you take into consideration that probably building costs are right in the area of $190 to $200 a square foot, that gives you $4 million, or a little over $4 million. But that's, again, nothing but.
Right. It'll be important too, I think the city of Janesville just realized that fire stations are a little expensive, more expensive than they used to be. That'll be so important for the council too. So there isn't a future council sitting here saying, hey, what happened? We said 2018. That $5 million number, I think, is from 2010. Is that right?
Well, that was the public safety building.
Right.
That included both the
Right.
police and fire. And
Yeah.
so that was a much larger building. But since then, costs were lower back then, and now
Yep.
we've seen an increase. Of what I've gotten from a couple of commercial builders is that it ranges from $190 to $210 a square foot, depending on materials.
Right. Okay.
The only thing that has been established is the agreement to keep the fire department at that location.
That's the only thing that's been.
That's it.
Right, both the city and the fire commission have agreed that that would be the site for the building.
So how far do we have to go back then, now that we have actually decided where exactly we're gonna have it? Does this,
Mark?
So I believe that
Sorry.
your intent is just to have a motion to place on the agenda for future discussion the topic of the fire department, and you're just directing that the
Well, Linda,
information that's been developed so far be presented at that point in time. Is
Linda,
that
do you
correct?
want to wait until after the joint meeting? Because maybe, and then let Brett know what you want for the agenda item? Because maybe that'll change after the joint meeting? I don't know.
Building a
think
new
that-
department isn't going to go away.
Well, there may be, I don't know.
I think that
Just
we
trying
need
to offer
to,
some suggestions because I'm not clear what she wants.
I wanna make a motion that we put the fire department building on the next agenda.
Or the cost for the fire department.
You won't have that. That
We don't know what the cost will be.
No, we won't have the cost, but let's look at the details here. Let's look
We
at
don't
the
have, do we
information.
have the details?
So we need to have a discussion.
Okay, so we are having a joint meeting. When's the joint meeting?
March 11th.
March 11th. We'll have a joint meeting March 11th. At that joint meeting, there will probably be something discussed, and that something will probably have some relevance to this discussion. At that point, we can put this on another agenda. If there's no opposition to that, that's the way we'll do that. This is the first really long meeting we've had in a while, so it's kind of exciting, but it's time to move on now. I think I can speak for the whole council when I say that everyone up here is committed to making sure that there's a brand new modern fire station built in the city of Milton here in very short order, as soon as we can. It's difficult to make these decisions, and it's difficult.
Well, and I think we've demonstrated our commitment by authorizing $350,000 for the equipment. I mean, that's something that's another investment into the staff and our fire department. I know it's not a new building, but I think historically, when you've asked for equipment, we've done everything we can to do that.
That's not an issue. Yeah, as I said in my statement, the
budget.
equipment's been upgraded, everything's going well with that, it's just that we're still in a non-compliant.
Yeah, well, and hopefully we'll get it built right, and then we won't have to talk about this again until we're all long gone. Then we move on to agenda item 6, which is a closed session.
Dan and I talked about this today. The only reason we wanted to put that on the agenda in case we had that information that Dan previously referenced from the banks, and if the motion that previously passed had passed and we had that information, we could have convened into closed session to discuss the potential, basically the use of investment of public funds. We don't have that information, so that agenda item at this point is moot.
So agenda items 6A and 7 are both removed. We won't be considering
Right.
either of those items.
Right.
We'll move on to agenda item 8, 8A. is our next meeting. It is March 17th, 2015
St. Patrick's Day.
at 7. Oh, is it?
Yep.
Oh, we'll find out who's Irish, I guess. At 7 p.m., so we'll get it done nice and quick so you can get out to your reveling. Item 9 is mayor and alderperson's reports. Any alderperson's reports?
Yes. Actually, like this. I do not like these things. I just want to say that we are in the process of putting together that comprehensive plan for the Parks and Recreation, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. I would like to have clarification of our committee and commission responsibilities. There's questions out there. So if we could somehow get that, maybe for the next meeting, that would be great.
A clarification of the responsibilities and that according to the ordinances? We can get that to you tomorrow morning.
Yep. And I was also, wanted to just let the DPW people know that they're doing a great job with the snow and the ice. Because I know the last time that we were here, I had some complaints and they've been addressed and everybody's happy now.
Any other alderperson's reports? Okay, I don't have anything either. Staff report, city administrator.
Thank you. One important item to place on everybody's radar that will be a very important discussion is on April 14th, we will be having our first kickoff meeting with our consultant to discuss the comprehensive plan. That will take place at the same time that the Plan Commission meeting takes place. We wanted to kind of put those together. So on April 14th, we will have that meeting to discuss the kickoff for the comprehensive plan. We will also at that point talk about the downtown plan, but it's our hope to meet with the consultant at DDAC as a group, meet with the consultant before that April 14th date. But April 14th will be a very important date on the agenda to talk about the update to the comprehensive plan, which will affect the entire community. So please put that, I'll send out information obviously, but just make sure that's on your radar. It'll be the same time, same location as the Plan Commission meeting on April 14th.
Well done. Director of Public Works.
Okay, at the Public Works Committee, we discussed the Emerald Ash Borer situation. We will have to cut the trees at Veterans Park, so probably next week, we'll probably start cutting those down. And that's the reason, and then we can replant in May some of those trees. We are gonna have a clean sweep again for the city. The county runs that, but it'll be at the city garage, June 12th. And we'll get more advertising out for that later.
Great. Something that I wanted to include in both of my budgets, and it just never made it, was a forestry plan for the city. It just never quite made it. We need to find a way to fund and to plan a diverse planting strategy in the city of Milton to make sure that when the next whatever, the pine eater or whatever the next tree is that gets a bug that destroys it, that we've built up a diverse whatever you call it, culture of trees and plantings around the city. So that's something that maybe that can come from Parks and Rec, maybe it comes from somewhere else, but that's something that we need to do. We need to find a way to be more deliberate and planned about that. Chief of Police. Director of the Library.
We received 2 more donations from individuals in the last couple weeks, totaling $50,000. So now we're up to $494,000 that we've raised.
Well done. Chief of the Joint Fire Department.
We instituted a new scheduling module that started February 1st, where we have people staying at the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It has significantly reduced our response times and staffed an engine and an ambulance 24 hours a day, which is good for the community because we can get there much quicker than we used to be able to do from waiting people to get to the station. And it's also alleviated some staff shortage problems that we were having to deal with during the daytime hours. So it's been a real big benefit, and the members have stepped up and really worked quite well to fill the time slots that are available. And some of them are even asking for more hours, so it's what's kind of a unique experience, so.
Good.
Sounds like a very good news article for the Courier.
City clerk.
All I have is that we do have an election coming up in April, and we're expected to get ballots next week, so anybody who's submitted absentee requests will probably start receiving their ballots next week.
Great. Finance director.
I don't have anything.
There you go. Agenda item 11 is the highlight of every evening. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Clark, second by Lauder. All those in favor?